The last trip that we took to the store, which was a trip to Costco, was in October. So we are coming up on 3 months where we've been primarily relying on the food that we grew and stored away to feed our family. I always love how eating this way forces me to think creatively to repurpose the winter squash, potatoes, and sweet potatoes that we eat so much of this time of the year, but also enjoy many of our longtime favorite meals. Who would like some?
I'll take all of it. I'll take all of it.
Watch out, I'm gonna open this and it's gonna be hot, okay? Okay, yeah, hot. Our 3 older kids are away this morning at a sleepover with their cousins, so I'm going to take advantage of the quieter house with just our 1-year-old home to get some meal prep done for the week. Coming off of the holidays, our fridge is actually really empty. Because we live a little further out in the country and all of the rest of our family lives closer together, closer to the city, we did a lot of day trips visiting family over the last few weeks. Since we never actually hosted, I did significantly less cooking over the holidays than I normally do, usually bringing a side dish like mashed potatoes or roasted butternut squash or sweet potatoes or cornbread to the different events that we had. That's it, thank you. It was a good change of pace and our kids had a blast, but now I'm definitely ready to get back to our regular rhythms. Yesterday, I did a few things to prep for making meals today. I got beans soaking by covering them in water overnight, and then we had a larger, over 6-pound chicken for lunch yesterday before the kids left for their sleepover. So I have quite a bit of leftover cooked chicken and broth to use. Then, last night before I went to bed, I put 2 packages of beef soup bones, which are also known as beef shanks, slow cooking in enough water to just cover the meat to have the meat and the resulting beef broth ready in the morning. So the first thing that I needed to do this morning was to take the beef soup bones out of the oven. Once they're out, I pull out the meat and the bones and strain the broth from the Dutch oven. I'm often asked if cooking the meat this way by soaking it in water makes it flavorless or ruins the texture, and I don't think it does at all. I wouldn't serve the meat like a steak or a roast on its own, but the meat is really tender and flavorful and perfect for using in soups or stews, stir fries, or casseroles. Today, I'm going to be using the meat in chili, and the big advantage to cooking this way is that along with slow cooking the meat, you get the addition of the flavorful and really nutrient-dense broth along with it. Beef shanks are from the shin of the cow, and so they contain the marrow bone that's most highly concentrated in the leg. So this is a really economical cut of meat, but it's also one of the most underrated in my opinion. The marrow bone has been long prized for its abundant nutrition and healing properties, especially for being highly beneficial for the digestive system and healing the gut, boosting the immune system, and reducing inflammation. After I separate the meat and the bones and strain the broth, I need to wash our Dutch oven, and then I'm going to use it to cook the beans after they've been soaking. Time to cook some beans. Bring this over here. This is a 6.75 quart Dutch oven. We also have a 9.5 quart one, and we use them both all the time. These are the Cherokee Trail of Tears black beans that we love to grow. We initially purchased the seed from Seed Savers Exchange, and now we just save our own seed each year. I bring the beans to a boil and then put them in our slow cooking oven that's at around 200 degrees to let them cook for an hour or so before taking them out to strain them. Once the beans are cooking, I need to head down to our basement to gather the rest of the food that I'll need that we have stored down there. Let's go. Can I carry you? For Christmas, Jim got the kids and I these really sweet fair trade market baskets made with woven elephant grass. I've been wanting something like this for a long time for transporting food up from the basement, so this was a great gift. Plus, I love that he got each of the kids one so that they can have their own for doing whatever they'd like with. But Clara was super excited to help fill her basket with me this morning.
Look how big that is.
I'm gonna grab a couple butternut squash, one that we'll add to the chili and then another that I'll figure out a use for later in the week, along with several potatoes, sweet potatoes, and bulbs of garlic. I want to get the butternut squash roasting right away to throw into the chili that I'm prepping, so I remove the seeds and then cook it cut side down for around 45 minutes or so at 375 degrees. For many years before we started growing our own food in such large quantities, I became an expert in stretching our very low food budget as far as I possibly could while still buying really high quality food. So when we started growing all of these storage crops in abundance, it's been a big mindset shift for me to stop thinking that I need to portion and ration everything, but instead that we have plenty that we don't want to go bad, and so I need to not be afraid to use it all up and be generous with sharing it. One of my favorite things about our AGA oven is that each of the oven compartments is set to different temperatures, so I often will have so many things cooking at the same time. There'll be beans slow cooking in the 200-degree oven, while the butternut squash bakes at 350, and then I roast potatoes at 400 or 450 degrees, which is the next thing that I need to get going. The next dish I'm gonna make is a chicken broccoli potato casserole. So I'm always looking for different ways to use up all of the potatoes that we have and the extra meat from the whole chicken that we cook each week. This is a newer recipe for us and we love it. It's a great change of pace from the soups that we eat so often. I need to chop the potatoes and get them roasting. So first I'll get some tallow melting on the pans while I chop the potatoes, and then I'm gonna roast them for about 25 minutes. You could use either fresh or frozen broccoli in this recipe, but I'm gonna use frozen. Organic frozen broccoli is one of the things that I do like to buy at Costco because we haven't had a ton of luck growing broccoli in large enough quantities to preserve for the winter. I'm also going to cook the broccoli at around 300 degrees while the potatoes are cooking, just to thaw them so I can chop them into smaller pieces before adding them to the casserole. Now that we have a very full oven with everything cooking, I'm going to prepare the rest of the ingredients for the casserole. So I need to chop up a few cloves of garlic that we'll add, as well as prepare the cream sauce. I also need to prep the cheese. Jim just made a batch of fresh mozzarella a couple of days ago, so I'll use that along with shredding some of the farmhouse cheddar cheese that we had made previously and store in the freezer. So this cream sauce is really similar to how I'd actually make a ranch dressing. You could totally even add some ranch spices to this recipe to give it that sort of flavor if you'd want, which would be delicious. The sauce is a combination of yogurt, sour cream, and mayonnaise. We always make our own yogurt and sour cream from our milk and our cream, and sometimes I'll make my own mayonnaise too, but we don't use it that often, so usually I'll grab a jar of the avocado oil mayo from Costco when I'm there, since we typically only go through a jar every few months. All of the veggies happen to be finished at the same time, so everything needs to come out of the oven. I like to flip over the butternut squash right away so that they can start to cool. To reduce the number of dishes that I need to do later, I'm actually just going to mix up the casserole directly in the 9x13 pan I used to roast the potatoes. This casserole comes together really easily and it's so good. In a large casserole dish, combine the roasted potatoes and broccoli. I like to chop up the broccoli in smaller chunks before adding it. And then I'm going to add 3 to 4 cups of diced cooked chicken. You'll add the garlic, some salt, and any other seasonings that you want to add, and then pour over the cream sauce. Mix that all together so that everything is combined, and then cover the whole thing with your cheese. It bakes at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. So while the casserole is cooking, I'm going to finish preparing the chili now since everything is ready for it. The beans are soft and need to be strained. I try to keep the liquid from straining the beans if I remember to use as either a broth or a base for cooking rice or just to pour over our garden for extra nutrients. The beans go back into that same Dutch oven that I'll use to make the chili in. Because the meat is already cooked and I don't need to brown ground beef, I'm just going to dump all the ingredients in to let them all slow cook together. Our kids love sweet potato chili, so I almost always add sweet potatoes. Along with the beans and sweet potatoes, I add fresh minced garlic, the meat from the beef shanks, as well as the broth, tomato sauce, the flesh of the butternut squash, along with some salt and chili powder. I used to always puree the butternut squash before adding it, but realized when I add it to soups that are going to be slow cooked anyways, the butternut squash just tends to melt into the soup and smooths out when it gets cooked and stirred, making pureeing in advance not necessary. We're gonna have this chili tomorrow actually, so I'm just gonna pop this Dutch oven into the fridge and then tomorrow it'll be ready to slow cook for the whole day before we eat it. I finished the chili right in time before the casserole finishes, which is what the 3 of us will eat for lunch today. There'll be enough left over for our whole family to eat it as another meal later in the week. Ooh, yum. That looks good. All right, hot. Back up, please. I just got a message from Grandma that she's going to be bringing our kids back in another hour or so. So after lunch and getting Clara down for her nap, I'm going to try to quickly get a soup cooking that we'll have for dinner, along with making a strawberry blueberry crisp for a special treat. One of our long-time staple soups has been a creamy chicken and rice soup that we add carrots and dried greens like nettles to. Another variation I love to make of that recipe is to use ground breakfast sausage in place of the chicken. We barter pork with some local friends and I love the flavor of their breakfast sausage. It goes perfectly in this recipe. Normally, I'd be adding onions to all of these soup recipes that I'm making, but it wasn't a great year for our onions. I finished our last one in December, so it's one of those things that we are just going without for now. Thankfully, we do have tons of garlic that I like to use liberally in all of these soups and casserole dishes. We go through carrots regularly, so I always have a bag of carrots in our kitchen fridge. I've gotten several questions about storing carrots long term. We've always had great luck with them staying firm for many, many months into the spring, but I honestly don't do anything too special. The last few years we've grown a variety of carrot called Scarlet Nantes carrots and just stored them in thicker plastic bags in the fridge tied at the top. Many of you have also shared how you've had great results storing carrots long term in sand, but we haven't tried that. This creamy sausage or chicken and rice soup is really easy to make. It always feeds us for 2 meals, and it's a great way to use a lot of the chicken broth and milk, which we always have in abundance. Plus, we all really like it, so we make this one all the time. I chop the garlic and the carrots and saute them along with the sausage directly in our Dutch oven. I like to keep chicken broth handy when I'm sauteing vegetables and meat to deglaze the pan if anything starts to stick. After the sausage is cooked, I pour in 2 quarts of chicken broth and bring it to a boil. The last step is adding salt and any other seasonings. I like to add dried nettle here for extra nutrients and color, and then the rice. We also buy the large bags of organic white rice from Costco, which we usually go through in about 6 months. Once that's all mixed together and boiling, I put the lid on and let it slow cook until we're ready for dinner. Before serving it, I like to add at least a pint of cream or milk, and then sometimes even additional milk or broth to get it to be more of a creamy soup texture. The rice really absorbs the liquid, so I often end up adding more liquid to get it to be the right soup consistency. The last thing I'm going to whip up is this berry crisp. I don't often make desserts with dinner, but every now and again I like to. Berries are one of those things that we stock up on in the summer when they're in season at a local organic U-Pick near us. But I have to be intentional about using them throughout the winter. Berry season always has a way of creeping up on me in the spring. So many times in the past, I've realized in May that I still have several quarts of berries to use up and I'm scrambling to put them to use. So this year, I'm hoping to avoid that and enjoy our berries throughout the winter. Not every recipe is great for using frozen berries for, but a berry crisp works really well for the frozen berries. I always use the same crumble oat topping on any fruit crisp, whether it's apples or peaches or berries, but when using frozen berries, I like to cook them first to make the filling. So I do this by heating them in a saucepan over low heat. I sprinkle the frozen berries with a tablespoon or 2 of tapioca starch, or you could use any thickener. This helps to thicken the berry sauce so that it's not too liquidy, but a good texture for the berry crisp. I make stovetop jam the same way, but when I'm making a crisp, I don't let the fruit get all the way cooked down like in a jam. I leave the strawberries whole and chunky. After the filling is the consistency that I want, I add a drizzle of maple syrup and taste it to make sure it's just the right sweetness. The crumble oat topping is a combination of oats, almond flour, brown sugar, and a pinch of salt. And then you add melted butter and some yogurt to bring it all together. That gets spooned on top of the berry filling, and then it's ready to pop in the oven. Maybe you've noticed a theme here, but when you cook from scratch, a lot of dishes are inevitable. So I try to use the same pans as much as possible to reduce dishes wherever I can, like using the same saucepan that I cooked the berries in to cook the whole crisp in. Alright, so that went in the oven just as Grandma was pulling into the driveway, which worked out perfectly. I really wanted to be able to be fully present to hear all of the adventures and stories that our kids had from their fun getaway when they walked into the door. Happy to see you.
Yeah, from our sleepover sleep. Whoa! You're having cream?
Oh, yeah.
I want to eat it.
I'm gonna look the top.
How is it?
Just a little bit more milk in. Make it just a little bit thinner.
Take
2 scoops.
the yummiest soup of all.
We do have a few birthdays coming up at the end of the month and the beginning of February, so I will likely make another trip to the store before then to pick up a few baking and pantry things. But for now, we are really grateful for the way that we aren't dependent on the store for our day-to-day needs and really enjoying and looking forward to more slower, simpler days at home that this season brings. Who would like some?
I'll take all of it. I'll take all of it.
All of it. you gotta share with the rest of us.